This weekend was an amazing weekend for sports, and chances are you watched a lot of March Madness and all the craziness that is the NCAA tournament. But there was also plenty of wild stuff during week 5 of the XFL season 2, and we got you covered with everything you might have missed. The biggest surprise of the week actually came on Thursday night. While a bunch of big-time March Madness games were on, the Seattle Sea Dragons quietly were hosting the Houston Roughnecks. Now, if you remember, the Roughnecks were one of 2 undefeated teams in the league coming into week 5. In Seattle, while they lost their first 2 games of the year, were coming into this game off of 2 straight wins. The Sea Dragons got off to a good start, and for the first time, the Roughnecks offense looked bad. Houston's offense has consistently looked like the best in the league over the first 4 weeks, but the Sea Dragons kinda had their way with them. Seattle actually ended up going into the half with a 15-0 lead over Houston. Ben DiNucci had a 20-yard rushing touchdown in the first quarter, and then followed it up with a 9-yard touchdown pass to Damian Willis. DiNucci and Seattle have had a good offense all year. Don't let their record convince you otherwise. The real surprise was that the Roughnecks were able to continue to stop them. There ended up not being any scoring in the third quarter, setting up for a huge fourth. And Houston made it very interesting. Max Borghi found the end zone from 1 yard out, and suddenly it was a 1-possession game. But that didn't last very long. After Houston got some of that momentum, it really did feel like the Roughnecks were going to orchestrate a big comeback. DiNucci was picked off on the next Sea Dragons drive, and it looked like Houston was actually going to pull it off, until they turned it over on downs and never picked up a first down on the drive. Seattle got it back and ran it down Houston's throat before capping it off with a Darius Bradwell 3-yard touchdown. At that point, it was 21-6 Seattle, and it looked like it was probably over. But with the XFL and some of the new rules, like a stopping clock after the first down and the onside kick substitution, there was always hope that the Roughnecks had a chance. Justin Smith scored on a long 47-yard touchdown from Brandon Silvers, and Houston even picked up the 15-yard 4th down onside kick. Then, Silvers was picked off after the ball was kinda knocked out of his hand. That led to a Seattle 21-14 dub to improve to 3-2 and give Houston their first loss of the season. I've kinda felt like Silvers wasn't truly one of the top quarterbacks in the league and that DiNucci may have been one of the best, but it honestly didn't look that way. DiNucci had a rough outing and even ended up throwing 3 interceptions. He's definitely improved a lot since his bad week 1 game versus DC, but he did have another stinker. But honestly, who cares? The Sea Dragons won, and now there's only one undefeated team left, the DC Defenders. The Defenders continue to roll, sweeping the St. Louis Battlehawks to go up 5-0 and drop St. Louis to 3-2. The Battlehawks have literally only lost to DC this year. Nobody scored in the first quarter, but credit where it's due, the Battlehawks put together what I think was probably the best goal line stand of the season. DC just couldn't get anything going down by the goal line and forced a turnover on downs. St. Louis did end up starting the scoring in the second quarter with a field goal, but then the Defenders got going. Abram Smith broke off for a 62-yard rushing touchdown, the longest in the XFL so far at the time. Then AJ McCarron was stripped late in the half. DC got to start their late drive on the St. Louis 14, and it only took 2 plays for Smith to find the end zone for his second touchdown of the game, and he still wasn't done yet. The Battlehawks had a field goal to kick off the scoring in the second half, and then Abram Smith broke off for a 70-yard touchdown. He was that dude. Without him, the Defenders probably don't win. Smith finished the game with 23 carries for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just a monster day. The Battlehawks did score on a George Campbell 15-yard touchdown pass to close the gap, but early in the fourth quarter, De'Aaron King scored from 10 yards out to extend the Defenders' lead. St. Louis has really been known for their wild comebacks this season, and the only one that did fall short was against DC, and that was the case again. But the Battlehawks still made it very interesting. AJ McCarron connected with Steven Mitchell on a 50-yard bomb with still more than 4 minutes left, and that made it 28-20 after the 2-point conversion. That gave the Battlehawks a serious chance to come back. But with 55 seconds left, trying to drive down the field, McCarron was picked off by who else? Michael Joseph, who's just been an interception machine at the biggest moment moments for DC. The defenders' passing game still sucks. They only had 90 yards, but Abram Smith led the way, and again, DC found a way, and now they're the only undefeated team in the XFL. Now, there were 2 winless teams in the XFL going into week 5, and something just had to give, because they had to play each other. The Orlando Guardians at the Vegas Vipers. It actually ended up being a pretty good game, and pretty interesting at that. There ended up being 10 touchdowns in the game, 5 from both teams, 6 coming in the second half, and 4 in the fourth quarter. The Vipers took a 23-19 lead into the fourth before literally scoring on the next play to extend the lead. Orlando scored on the next drive, and then Vegas immediately responded with another touchdown of their own. That was literally the 3rd touchdown within the first 9 minutes of the fourth quarter. And there was only one more score, a Quentin Dormady 45-yard touchdown to Cody Latimer with a minute remaining. Also, yes, if that name sounds familiar, Dormady is back after the whole scandal where he allegedly was giving other teams the Guardians playbook. Turns out it wasn't true. On the next play, the Guardians could not get the conversion, and on the onside kick play, Dormady was sacked. Orlando did get the ball back down 35-32, but the Guardians were way backed up and just couldn't get it done. Orlando drops to a depressing 0-5, and the Vipers finally get their first win of the season. Quentin Dormady and Luis Perez actually combined for 5 touchdowns with no interceptions. The only player that caught more than 2 touchdowns was Jeff Badette. It was a great day for the quarterbacks. Meanwhile, 3 different players rushed for touchdowns for the Guardians, and Rod Smith had 2 for the Vipers. The Arlington Renegades San Antonio Brahmas game wasn't exactly an offensive game. It did feature some huge defensive plays though. There were literally only 2 touchdowns all game. Reed Sinnett found TJ Vasher for a 6-yard touchdown, and that did give the Brahmas a 7-3 lead in the first quarter after a 1-point conversion. The 2 exchanged field goals before the half to go into the break with San Antonio up 10-6. There was only one more scoring play for the entire game, a Devion Smith punch-in from a yard out that gave Arlington a 12-10 lead, and ultimately the win. The Brahmas did have a chance late, but were intercepted on back-to-back drives in the final minutes. It was a rough night for the Brahmas quarterbacks. Reed Sinnett and Jack Cohn combined for 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. For the Renegades, Kyle Slaughter didn't have a touchdown, but threw a pick, and it was just a gross game altogether. But the Renegades improved to 3-2, and San Antonio drops to 1-4. We're now officially at the halfway point of the XFL season, and now we have a clear picture of who's good and who's not. The XFL North seems to be more of the powerhouse. The Defenders are 5-0 and the only undefeated team remaining, while the Battlehawks and Sea Dragons are both now 3-2. St. Louis has literally only lost to DC, and Seattle is heating up after an 0-2 start to sit at 3-2. That leaves the Vipers in the basement at 1-4. In the XFL South, the Roughnecks led the way at 4-1, and the Renegades aren't too far behind at 3-2. That leaves the putrid 1-4 San Antonio Brahmas, who have only beaten the even worse 0-5 Orlando Guardians. There's still a lot of time left to go in the XFL season, but I think we now know who's good and who's not.